Right, this is Globalization, Part 2, page 3. All right, last thing then under Truman would be the start of the arms race in 1949. Late 1948, early 1949, because we discovered the Soviets had an atomic bomb. So once we realized they had an atomic bomb, we start to develop something more deadly, the hydrogen bomb. It also led to greater emphasis on math and science in schools, the whole arms race did. And Truman had to create the Federal Civil Defense Administration. The Federal Civil Defense Administration, which made sure every community had designated fallout shelters, published information about how to, what to do if there is an atomic attack in your community. So that was the Federal Civil Defense Administration. All right, any questions on Truman? So really, I mean, the Cold War begins here under Truman. All righty. Eisenhower is going to continue to practice the policy of containment, and he looks a little bit more aggressive on paper than Truman. In actions, he was probably a little bit less aggressive. So brinkmanship. Anybody remember what that idea was of Eisenhower and Dulles?
See how far we can push the Soviets.
Yeah, push the Soviets to the brink of war and then back down. But the whole idea here is let's maybe try to roll back communism, not just contain it, but maybe roll it back. And so we're going to see how far we can push them in trying to do that without getting them into war. All right, then you had massive retaliation and deterrence. What did Eisenhower spend most of his defense spending on? Nuclear bombs. Yes, more bang for your buck. So let's build up our nuclear arsenal that we look so tough that no one will ever want to mess with us. That's the idea of deterrence. Okay? People will be deterred from ever messing with us because we look so strong with all the weapons we have. Now, this saved money, but it also limited options. Okay? If somebody does threaten you, and you're not doing as much conventional military spending. All right. He also kind of had his own twist on containment, and that was the domino theory, saying if one country fell to communism, the surrounding countries would fall. You might want to write there, that's why he got us involved in supporting South Vietnam. The Eisenhower Doctrine, that was basically the same as the Truman Doctrine, but it was specific to the Middle East, that we're going to support any Middle Eastern country trying to resist communism. And that came as a result of the Suez Canal crisis, where Egypt was mad at us when we wouldn't give them money to build some dams, and part of the reason we didn't is because they were getting money from the Soviet Union. And then they took over the Suez Canal. That made France and Britain and Israel angry, and they started a mini war with Egypt before it all stopped. The space race also began in 1956 with the launching of Sputnik by the Soviets. And again, that's a big deal. If they can launch a satellite up into space, are they going to be able to launch a nuclear missile eventually up into space? So we responded by creating NASA, and again, more money to math and science in school. Okay, and then he's the first president that begins our involvement in Vietnam. Right, after France fell to Ho Chi Minh, after the Geneva Conference, you have North and South Vietnam created. North was communist, South was non-communist. And before they had elections to unite, civil war broke out. So he gives aid to South Vietnam because we don't want it to fall to communism. So that's going to come in the form of money and 200 military advisors. All right, Kennedy then, his two big issues were Cuba and nation building in order to contain communism. So what was the Bay of Pigs? under Kennedy? Michaela?
That was a failed analysis for the military operation designed to get rid of the cash.
Very good. Yeah, the plan is actually put together under Eisenhower, and it trained Cuban exiles to take over Cuba from Castro. But it failed. It made us look very hypocritical. It also made Kennedy look weak, which is why Khrushchev is really going to push Kennedy. As a result of this, the Berlin Wall goes up, and then we also have the Cuban Missile Crisis, Khrushchev pushing Kennedy again.
Wait, the Berlin Wall was after this?
Berlin Wall was 1961. Alrighty, Cuban Missile Crisis then. What happens in the Cuban Missile Crisis? Why did it start?
Russia was putting nuclear weapons in Cuba.
Very good. we discovered their Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba that could reach most American cities. How did Kennedy respond to this?
Blockading Cuba.
Yes, a quarantine or blockade of Cuba. And how was war avoided? What did they agree to do?
Russia took its missiles out of Cuba and we took ours out of Cuba.
Okay, very good. Yeah. Soviet Union took their missiles out of Cuba. We pledged not to invade Cuba. And later on down the road, secretly, it wasn't published as part of the agreement, we removed our missiles from Turkey. And this led to the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which said we would not test our nuclear weapons anymore above ground. All right, examples of nation building, that we're going to build up nations, we're going to make them stronger, and that's how we're going to contain communism. The Peace Corps. What was the Peace Corps?
Send young people to other countries
Very good. To do what?
to
Volunteer.
yeah.
Yeah. Send young people to poor countries to basically volunteer in service projects. And this would help encourage a positive view of America and democracy, at the same time strengthen the country. All right, what was the Alliance for Progress? That gave economic aid, but to what region of the world? Latin America, yes. So it gave them projects that would help improve their infrastructure. Again, it gave them a positive view of America and democracy, at the same time strengthen them so they're not as susceptible to communism. And how did he increase our involvement in Vietnam? 16,000 troops. They were not in combat roles, though. Okay, more economic aid and 16,000 troops. And it's also, during this time, the CIA plotted an assassination of No Dinh Diem. Since he was not well liked by the people, he was not very popular, it was actually hurting our efforts to help South Vietnam.